Welcome to the world of science fiction, where extraordinary tales and boundless imagination come to life. Enjoy the story and don't forget to subscribe. The wind howled through the Crimson Canyon, a mournful dirge that echoed Ethan's despair. Dust devils danced across the desolate landscape of Xylos, a remote desert planet that served as a dumping ground for the galaxy's unwanted. Ethan, once a respected diplomat, now felt like another discarded piece of refuse, cast aside by a society that had once lauded his skills. The weight of the metal cuffs on his wrists was a constant reminder of his disgrace. Treason. The word burned in his mind, a brand seared into his very being. He had been accused of treason for a crime he didn't commit, or perhaps, a crime of the heart. His failed diplomatic mission to the Abyssal Kingdom had resulted in a devastating war, and he had been made the scapegoat. Now, shackled to an abyssal royal as a symbol of human dominance, his life was reduced to a desperate struggle for survival in this forsaken wasteland. Beside him, Seraphina moved with a fluid grace that belied her captivity. Her skin, the color of deep-sea coral, shimmered under the harsh Xylos sun. Her eyes, large and luminous, held a cold, calculating intelligence that sent a shiver down Ethan's spine. She was an exile, a princess stripped of her title and forced to endure the indignity of being chained to a human. Her presence was a constant challenge, a living embodiment of the conflict that had shattered his career and plunged the galaxy into war. "Do you find my misery amusing, human?" Seraphina's voice was like the murmur of the ocean depths, laced with a chilling disdain. Ethan sighed, the dry air rasping in his throat. "I find nothing amusing about this situation, princess. We are both prisoners here. Prisoners of your making," she spat, her eyes flashing with anger. "Your incompetence ignited a war that has cost countless lives. Now, I am forced to endure your pathetic company in this wasteland." He resisted the urge to lash out. Anger would solve nothing. He needed to understand her, to find some common ground in this shared predicament. "I tried to prevent the war. You know that. Your own people were unwilling to compromise." "Compromise?" Seraphina laughed, a hollow, mirthless sound. "You humans offered us scraps while demanding our oceans. You sought to exploit our technology, our resources, our very existence. We merely defended ourselves." Ethan knew the official narrative: the Abyssals were a hostile, expansionist race, determined to conquer the surface world. But he had seen something different during his time in their underwater kingdom. He had witnessed their advanced technology, their intricate social structure, and their deep connection to the ocean. He had also sensed a deep-seated fear of the surface world, a fear that had been manipulated by forces on both sides to ignite the war. There were forces at play, Seraphina, forces that wanted this war. "I believe your people were misled, just as mine were." She scoffed. "Naive, as always. You humans believe you can manipulate anything to your advantage. You will learn, human. Here in Xylos, there are no advantages." Their chains clanked as they walked, the sound a constant reminder of their forced proximity. The penal colony was a sprawling network of crude shelters carved into the canyon walls, overseen by armed guards and patrolled by drones. The inmates were a motley collection of criminals, political dissidents, and war refugees, all struggling to survive in the harsh environment. The warden, a gruff, pragmatic man named Thorne, had made it clear that Ethan and Seraphina were to be treated no differently than any other inmate. They were assigned to a labor detail, mining for rare minerals in the scorching heat. The work was backbreaking, and the rations were meager. Ethan found himself constantly observing Seraphina, trying to decipher her enigmatic nature. She possessed a quiet strength, a resilience that impressed him despite his resentment. She seemed to draw energy from the environment, her coral skin glowing faintly in the twilight. He noticed her studying the rock formations, her eyes scanning the canyon walls with an intensity that suggested she was searching for something. "What are you looking for?" he asked one evening, as they rested against a crumbling rock face, their bodies aching from the day's labor. Nothing that would concern you, human, she replied, her voice guarded. I doubt that. Everything about you concerns me. We are shackled together, after all. She glared at him. Do not presume to understand me, Ethan. You know nothing of my world, my people, my purpose. Then tell me, he urged. Help me understand. She hesitated, her gaze shifting to the distant horizon. There are things in this canyon, things that predate both our civilizations. Ancient secrets, buried beneath the sand. I sense them. Ethan frowned. Secrets? What kind of secrets? Secrets that could change everything, she said cryptically. Secrets that could either save us or destroy us. The next day, during their labor detail, Serafina led Ethan away from the main mining site, towards a secluded section of the canyon. The guards were lax, their attention focused on maintaining order among the other inmates. Serafina seemed to know exactly where she was going, her movements purposeful and determined. Where are you taking me? Ethan asked, his heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Patience, human, she said. You will see. They reached a narrow crevice in the canyon wall, hidden behind a thick cluster of thorny bushes. Serafina pushed aside the bushes, revealing a dark, gaping opening. This is it, she said, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. The entrance to the ancient structure. Ethan hesitated. Are you sure this is safe? We could get into serious trouble if we're caught. Trouble is our constant companion, Ethan. Besides, I have a feeling this is more important than following orders. He took a deep breath and stepped into the darkness, Serafina close behind. The air inside the crevice was cool and damp, a welcome relief from the scorching heat outside. The tunnel sloped downwards, leading them deeper into the heart of the canyon. As they moved further into the tunnel, the walls began to change. The rough, jagged rock gave way to smooth, polished surfaces, etched with intricate symbols that seemed to pulse with a faint, inner light. The symbols were unlike anything Ethan had ever seen, a blend of geometric patterns and organic forms that hinted at an advanced, long-forgotten civilization. What is this place? Ethan whispered, his voice filled with awe. I do not know, Serafina replied, her voice hushed. But I believe it holds the key to our future. They continued to explore the tunnel, their senses heightened by the anticipation of discovery. The tunnel opened into a large chamber, its walls adorned with the same intricate symbols. In the center of the chamber stood a massive structure, a towering monolith of polished obsidian that seemed to hum with energy. As Ethan reached out to touch the monolith, a surge of energy coursed through his body, sending a jolt of awareness that his whole life was leading him towards this moment. Suddenly, the monolith pulsed with light, illuminating the chamber with an ethereal glow. The symbols on the walls began to spin, creating a mesmerizing display of light and color. And then, a voice echoed through the chamber, a voice that seemed to resonate from the very depths of the earth. Welcome, children of the stars, the voice said. You have awakened the ancient ones. Ethan stared at Serafina, his heart pounding in his chest. They were no longer just prisoners in a penal colony. They were players in a game far grander than anything they could have imagined. And the rules were about to change. The crimson cord that bound them was about to become something more than just a symbol of punishment. It was about to become a link to a destiny that neither of them could have foreseen. The ancient monolith pulsed, bathing the chamber in an otherworldly light. Ethan stared, transfixed, as the voice echoed, Welcome, children of the stars. You have awakened the ancient ones. He felt Serafina's grip tighten on his arm, her coral skin practically glowing in the ethereal luminescence. What was that? He breathed, his voice barely audible above the hum of the monolith. Serafina's eyes were wide, her expression a mixture of awe and apprehension. I don't know. I've never felt anything like this before. The symbols on the walls continued to spin, faster and faster, until they blurred into streaks of light. Ethan felt a strange sensation, as if his mind was expanding, reaching out to something beyond his comprehension. He saw flashes of images, swirling galaxies, alien landscapes, and beings of pure energy. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the light faded. The symbols stopped spinning, and the voice fell silent. The chamber returned to its previous state, bathed in the dim light of their makeshift torches. Ethan stumbled back, his head swimming. What happened? Serafina shook her head, trying to clear her thoughts. I think we've triggered something. Something powerful. They stood in silence for a moment, trying to process what they had just experienced. The air was thick with anticipation, a sense that something profound had been set in motion. We need to understand this, Ethan said, his voice firm. We need to figure out what this place is and what it means. Serafina nodded. Agreed. But we must be cautious. We don't know what else might be lurking in these tunnels. They began to explore the chamber, examining the symbols on the walls and the structure of the monolith. Ethan noticed that some of the symbols seemed familiar, resembling constellations he had studied as a child. Serafina, on the other hand, focused on the monolith, running her hands over its smooth surface, as if trying to decipher its secrets. This material, it's unlike anything I've ever encountered, she said, her voice hushed. It's as if it's alive, drawing energy from the surrounding environment. As they continued their exploration, they discovered a hidden passage behind the monolith. The passage was narrow and dark, but they could feel a faint current of air flowing through it, suggesting that it led to another part of the structure. Let's go, Ethan said, his curiosity piqued. Let's see where this leads. They cautiously entered the passage, their torches casting long, dancing shadows on the walls. The passage sloped downwards, leading them deeper into the earth. The air grew cooler and damper, and they could hear the faint sound of dripping water. After what seemed like an eternity, the passage opened into a vast cavern. The cavern was filled with stalactites and stalagmites, creating a surreal and otherworldly landscape. In the center of the cavern, a pool of water shimmered under the light of their torches. This is incredible, Ethan whispered, his voice filled with awe. Serafina approached the pool, her eyes fixed on its surface. This is not ordinary water, Ethan. I can sense it. It's connected to something else. Something vast. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the cavern, startling them both. You seek knowledge, surface dwellers. Ethan and Serafina whirled around, their hands instinctively reaching for weapons they didn't possess. Standing in the shadows, a figure emerged. It was another abyssal, but unlike Serafina, this one was clad in crude, makeshift armor. His face was scarred, and his eyes held a look of hardened resolve. Who are you? Ethan demanded, trying to conceal his fear. My name is Kalen, the abyssal replied, his voice rough. And I am a prisoner of this forsaken world, just like you. How did you get here? Serafina asked, her voice wary. I have been here for many cycles, Kalen said. I was captured for sabotage against the human war machine. They brought me here, hoping to break me. But I have endured. You know about this place? Ethan asked, gesturing to the cavern. Kalen nodded. This place, it is ancient. It was built by a civilization that predates both our species. They were known as the architects. They possessed knowledge beyond our comprehension. The humans seek to weaponize it. Ethan and Serafina exchanged worried glances. Weaponize it? Ethan asked. How? They believe the structure can be used to manipulate the very fabric of spacetime, Kalen explained. To open portals to other worlds, to unleash weapons of unimaginable power. That's insane, Ethan said. The consequences could be catastrophic. Indeed, Kalen agreed. That is why I have been working to sabotage their efforts. But I cannot do it alone. I need your help. Serafina studied Kalen carefully, her expression unreadable. "Why should we trust you?" she asked. "You are one of them. You have more reason to betray us." Kalen sighed. "I understand your suspicion. But I assure you, my loyalty lies with my people. And I believe that the only way to save our civilization is to prevent the humans from exploiting this ancient power." Ethan looked at Serafina, weighing their options. He knew that trusting Kalen was a risk, but he also knew that they couldn't afford to ignore his warning. The fate of the galaxy might depend on it. "All right, Kalen," Ethan said, his voice resolute. "We'll help you. But you have to tell us everything you know about this place. And you have to prove that you can be trusted." Kalen nodded, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "I will not fail you," he said. "Together, we can stop the humans from unleashing a power they cannot control." Meanwhile, back at the penal colony, Warden Thorne paced his office, his brow furrowed in concern. He had noticed that Ethan and Serafina had been acting strangely lately, disappearing for extended periods and returning with a secretive air. He had also received reports of unusual activity in the canyon, strange energy readings and unexplained tremors. He suspected that the prisoners were up to something, but he couldn't figure out what. "Damn it," Thorne muttered, slamming his fist on his desk. "I need to know what those two are planning. Before it's too late." He summoned his second-in-command, a burly, scarred man named Jax. "Jax, I want you to keep a close eye on Ethan and Serafina," Thorne ordered. "Follow them, monitor their movements, and report back to me immediately if they do anything suspicious." "You think they're planning an escape, Warden?" Jax asked. "I don't know," Thorne admitted. "But I have a feeling it's something more than that. Something bigger." Jax nodded. "I'll get right on it, Warden." As Jax left the office, Thorne stared out the window, his gaze fixed on the distant canyon. He had a bad feeling about this. A feeling that something terrible was about to happen. And he knew that he had to do everything in his power to prevent it. Back in the ancient structure, Ethan, Serafina, and Kalen continued their exploration. Kalen led them to a hidden chamber, where he had been conducting his sabotage efforts. The chamber was filled with dismantled machinery and crude tools. "This is where I have been trying to disable the humans' research," Kalen explained. "But their security is tight. I need more time, more resources." "We can help you," Ethan said. "Serafina and I are good at getting around unnoticed. We can gather information, steal supplies, whatever you need." "Thank you," Kalen said, his voice filled with gratitude. "Together, we can make a difference." As they worked together, Ethan began to learn more about Kalen and his motivations. He discovered that Kalen was not simply a saboteur. He was also a brilliant engineer, deeply committed to protecting his people and their way of life. Ethan also noticed that Serafina was starting to warm up to Kalen. They spoke in their native language, sharing stories and memories of their underwater kingdom. Ethan realized that Serafina had been deeply lonely, cut off from her people and her culture. Kalen's presence was a connection to her past, a reminder of who she was and where she came from. As they worked, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. He knew that Warden Thorne was suspicious of them, and he feared that it was only a matter of time before he discovered their secret. He glanced at Serafina, her face illuminated by the glow of the machinery. He knew that he had to protect her, not just from the humans, but from the ancient power that they were trying to control. The crimson cord that bound them was no longer just a symbol of punishment. It was a bond of shared purpose, a link to a destiny that they had to face together. The echoes of the deep were calling, and they had to answer. Back in the dimly lit chamber, Ethan, Serafina, and Kalen huddled around a crude map sketched on the cavern floor. Kalen pointed to a series of tunnels that branched off from the main chamber. "These tunnels lead to the surface," he explained. "But they are heavily guarded. The humans have established observation posts along the route. We need a way to bypass the guards, Ethan said, his brow furrowed in thought. Is there another way out? Kalen hesitated. There is another way, he said, his voice low. But it is dangerous. Legend speaks of an underground lake, connected to this structure by a series of submerged tunnels. The lake is said to be inhabited by creatures. Serafina's eyes widened. The deep maw, she whispered, her voice filled with dread. My people tell stories of those creatures. They are said to be guardians of the ancient secrets. Guardians or monsters? Ethan asked, his skepticism evident. Both, perhaps, Kalen replied. But it is our only hope. If we can navigate the submerged tunnels, we can reach the surface undetected. The decision was made. They would brave the deep maw. Kalen led them to a hidden entrance to the submerged tunnels, located at the bottom of the pool in the cavern. The entrance was a narrow, jagged opening, barely large enough for a person to squeeze through. The water is cold and dark, Kalen warned. And the currents are strong. We must stay close together. Ethan took a deep breath and plunged into the water, Serafina and Kalen close behind. The water was frigid, numbing his skin instantly. The darkness was absolute, broken only by the faint glow of their torches, which struggled to penetrate the murky depths. They swam through the tunnels, the water swirling around them, pushing and pulling them in different directions. The silence was deafening, broken only by the sound of their own breathing. Ethan felt a growing sense of unease, a primal fear that something was lurking in the darkness, watching them. Suddenly, Serafina stopped, her hand gripping Ethan's arm tightly. She pointed to something in the distance. Two glowing eyes were staring back at them. Ethan's heart leaped into his throat. He could make out the shape of a large, serpentine creature, its body covered in scales. The deep maw. The creature lunged at them, its jaws snapping shut with a terrifying force. Ethan pushed Serafina and Kalen aside, narrowly avoiding the creature's attack. He kicked out with his legs, trying to create some distance between himself and the monster. The creature roared, its voice echoing through the tunnels. It lunged again, its teeth tearing at Ethan's clothes. He fought back, striking at the creature's eyes with his fists. Serafina and Kalen joined the fight, using their torches to blind the creature. The creature thrashed wildly, its body slamming against the walls of the tunnel. After what seemed like an eternity, they managed to drive the creature away. It retreated into the darkness, its glowing eyes disappearing into the depths. Ethan gasped for air, his body aching and bruised. "Are you both all right?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "We are alive," Serafina replied, her voice trembling. "But we must hurry. That creature will not give up easily." They continued their journey through the submerged tunnels, their senses heightened by the encounter with the deep maw. They encountered other creatures along the way, smaller and less menacing, but still dangerous. Finally, they reached the end of the tunnels. They emerged into a vast underground lake, its surface shimmering under the faint light that filtered down from above. The lake was surrounded by towering rock formations, and the air was thick with mist. It was a beautiful, yet eerie place. "We made it," Ethan said, relief washing over him. "We're safe." But their relief was short-lived. As they stepped onto the shore of the lake, they were greeted by a group of armed soldiers. "You're under arrest," the leader of the soldiers said, his voice cold. "You are charged with treason and conspiracy." Ethan, Serafina, and Kalen were surrounded. They were trapped. Meanwhile, back at the penal colony, Commander Zara arrived, her shuttle landing with a deafening roar. She stepped out, her face grim. She was a tall, imposing woman, with a stern expression and a no-nonsense attitude. She was a seasoned military leader, known for her ruthlessness and her unwavering loyalty to the human cause. Warden Thorne greeted her with a salute. "Welcome to Xylos, Commander Zara," he said. "What brings you here?" I'm here to investigate the reports of unusual activity in the canyon, Zara replied, her eyes scanning the area. I understand you have 2 prisoners who may be involved. Thorn hesitated. Ethan and Serafina, he said. They've been difficult. But I don't believe they're capable of anything serious. Zara raised an eyebrow. I don't take chances, Warden, she said. I want those prisoners brought to me. Now. Thorn swallowed hard. He knew that Zara was not someone to be trifled with. He had no choice but to obey her orders. Yes, Commander, he said. I'll have them brought to you immediately. As Thorn turned to leave, Zara stopped him. And Warden, she said, her voice low. If those prisoners resist, do not hesitate to use force. Thorn nodded, his heart sinking. He knew that things were about to get a lot worse. Back at the underground lake, Ethan, Serafina, and Kalen were being led away by the soldiers. They were taken to a makeshift camp, where they were interrogated by Commander Zara herself. So, Zara said, her eyes fixed on Ethan. You think you can hide secrets from me? You think you can undermine the human cause? We're not trying to undermine anything, Ethan replied, his voice defiant. We're just trying to survive. Survival is not an excuse for treason, Zara snapped. You have been consorting with the enemy. You have been plotting against humanity. That's not true, Serafina said, her voice rising. We're trying to prevent a war. A war that will destroy both our civilizations. Zara laughed. A noble sentiment, she said. But misguided. The Abyssals are our enemies. They must be crushed. They're not our enemies, Ethan argued. They're just afraid. They're afraid of what we'll do to them. Fear is a weapon, Zara said. And we will use it to our advantage. Zara turned to Kalen. And you, she said, her voice dripping with scorn. You are a traitor to your own people. You have betrayed your king, your country, your very existence. I am loyal to peace, Kalen replied, his voice firm. I will not stand by and watch as you destroy everything we have built. Zara sneered. You are a fool, she said. But your foolishness will not be tolerated. You will all be punished. Severely. Zara ordered the soldiers to take Ethan, Serafina, and Kalen away. They were thrown into a dark, damp cell, their hopes dwindling. As they sat in silence, Ethan couldn't help but wonder if they had made a mistake. Had they been too trusting? Had they underestimated the power of their enemies? He looked at Serafina, her face pale and drawn. He knew that she was relying on him, that she believed in him. He couldn't let her down. He looked at Kalen, his eyes filled with determination. He knew that Kalen was risking everything to protect his people. He couldn't let him down either. Ethan took a deep breath and stood up. We're not giving up, he said, his voice resolute. We're going to find a way out of here. We're going to stop Zara. We're going to save both our civilizations. Serafina and Kalen looked at each other, a glimmer of hope flickering in their eyes. They knew that it would be a long and difficult road, but they were not alone. They had each other. And that was enough. As the sands of Xylos swirled around them, a storm of treachery was brewing. But within that storm, a spark of defiance had been ignited. And that spark had the potential to change everything.